All right, so get this. We're diving into the life of William James Sidis today.
Oh, wow.
You probably know him as that child prodigy who mastered multiple languages and complex math before most kids were even tying their shoes.
Right.
But here's the catch.
Okay.
Sidis walked away from it all, seeking a perfect life through isolation.
Interesting.
Was this a genius rejecting a world that couldn't understand him? Could the Enneagram, specifically Type 5 conservation, shed light on this? Let's find out.
The tension in his story is fascinating.
Right.
We see immense intellectual potential,
Yeah.
but also a deliberate retreat from the very world that might have celebrated his gifts.
It's almost like he was allergic to fame.
It is.
So for those of us who've explored the Enneagram,
Right.
what specific Type 5 conservation traits
Yeah.
might we see playing out in Sidis' life?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I mean, we're talking more than just introverted and bookish here, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
A Type 5, especially the conservation subtype, isn't just introverted.
Right.
They're driven by a core fear of being overwhelmed or incapable.
I see.
They build up knowledge as a defense mechanism, a way to feel competent and self-sufficient
Okay.
in a world that feels threatening.
So it's not just about loving knowledge. It's
Yeah.
about knowledge being a shield.
Yeah, a shield, exactly.
That makes sense. And Sidis did say,
Right.
I want to live a perfect life. The only way to achieve this is through isolation and solitude. I have always hated multitudes.
Wow.
Those are the words of someone who simply enjoys peace and quiet.
No, they're not.
Right.
That quote points to something deeper.
Yeah.
Hating multitudes suggests a fear of the demands that come with social interaction. For a 5, especially a conservation 5, those demands can feel like an attack on their resources, their carefully constructed inner world.
Wow. So even early on, we see this pattern emerging.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about his childhood now, specifically his relationship with his mother, which was reportedly quite strained.
Okay.
Could his Type 5 tendencies have played a role there?
It's definitely possible.
Okay.
Imagine a Type 5 child already wired for independence and deep thinking,
Right.
raised by a mother who, while well-intentioned, may not have fully grasped his need for space.
You're saying it could have felt like a constant invasion to him, like she was encroaching on his precious inner world.
Precisely.
Okay.
Type 5 children often crave autonomy and intellectual exploration.
I see.
They need to feel in control of their environment and their learning process.
Right.
If that's disrupted, it can lead to friction and withdrawal.
And from what we know, Sidis' mother was very involved in his education.
Right.
So instead of nurturing his natural curiosity,
Yeah.
it might have backfired, pushing him further into himself.
It's sad irony, isn't it?
Yeah.
A brilliant mind potentially stifles by the very person trying to cultivate it.
Wow.
This tension between his innate needs and his upbringing could explain a lot about his later choices.
That's a great point. I'm starting to see how these early experiences could have solidified his conservation 5 tendencies, making him even more wary of the outside world.
And, it's interesting to consider how those tendencies might have influenced his career choices later on.
Okay.
We know he had incredible intellectual potential,
Yeah.
but opted for jobs that on the surface seemed far beneath his capabilities.
Clerical work timekeeping.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that.
It almost felt like he was hiding his brilliance, right?
It did.
So how does the avarice of a conservation 5, that hoarding of knowledge, play into this?
Oh, that's a great question.
Was he afraid of sharing his gifts?
Right.
Of being exploited or drained by others?
That's a key question.
Yeah.
Remember, for a conservation 5, knowledge is power,
Right.
and sharing it too freely can feel like a loss of control, a vulnerability.
Okay.
They seek mastery for themselves,
Yeah.
not necessarily recognition or external validation.
So maybe those seemingly mundane jobs provided him with a sense of security, a predictable routine where he could utilize his intellect without feeling pressured to constantly prove himself or compete in the academic arena.
Yeah.
It was his way of managing his energy and protecting his inner resources.
It's a fascinating possibility.
Yeah.
These jobs may have offered the perfect balance, intellectual stimulation, without the demands of a high-pressure environment or the constant need to engage with others. It was a way for him to exist in the world while maintaining his carefully constructed boundaries.
It's really making me rethink the whole idea of ambition.
It is.
Maybe Sidis was ambitious just in a way that didn't fit the conventional mold.
Yeah.
His ambition was inward-focused, directed towards mastering knowledge and understanding the world on his own terms.
Exactly.
Right.
And this is where the distinction between the social 5 and the conservation 5 becomes crucial.
Okay.
A social 5, while still an introvert,
Right.
seeks validation within specific intellectual circles.
Got it.
They might thrive in academia or research contributing to a shared body of knowledge.
But Sidis seemed to actively avoid those circles, right?
He did.
He wasn't interested in publishing groundbreaking theories or engaging in intellectual debates.
Right.
It was more about personal fulfillment, about satisfying his own insatiable curiosity.
You're hitting the nail on the head.
Okay.
And that points us firmly towards the conservation subtype.
Right.
Their focus is internal mastery,
Gotcha.
building a comprehensive understanding of the world without necessarily seeking external validation or accolades.
So it's like he was building a vast internal library, meticulously categorizing and organizing his knowledge,
Yeah.
but with no desire to share it with the world.
And, this pattern extends even to his personal life.
Really?
We know Sidis had limited romantic involvement.
Okay.
He reportedly only had one brief romantic relationship.
Wow.
This too aligns with the Conservation 5's tendency towards emotional withdrawal.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
Yeah.
It's like every aspect of his life, his childhood, his career choices, even his romantic life, was shaped by this deep-seated need for control, for creating a safe and predictable inner world where his intellect could flourish without intrusion.
And it's this need for control that ultimately leads us to the heart of Sidis's pursuit of a perfect life.
Okay.
It wasn't about fame or fortune, but about achieving a state of being where he could fully immerse himself in his intellectual pursuits
Right.
without the distractions or demands of the outside world.
So his perfect life, his pursuit of isolation, wasn't a rejection of the world as much as it was a way to protect his inner world, to create a space where his unique way of being could thrive.
That's a powerful insight.
It is.
And it challenges us to consider,
Yeah.
what does a perfect life truly mean? Is it about external achievements or about finding a way to live in alignment with our deepest needs and values, even if those needs and values seem unconventional or even radical to the outside world?
This is getting deep, folks. We're just scratching the surface here.
We are.
But already I'm seeing Sidis in a whole new light, not as a tragic figure who wasted his potential, but as someone who deliberately chose a path that, for him, represented true freedom and fulfillment.
That's just the beginning.
Right.
We still need to explore his fascination with collecting things, his political leanings,
Okay.
and of course that lingering question. What would a perfect life have looked like for William James Sidis?
Stay with us as we continue to unravel this fascinating story.
This whole exploration of Sidis through the Enneagram
Yeah.
is really highlighting how
Right.
the system isn't about labeling people,
Right.
but about understanding the deeper motivations behind their actions.
Okay.
It's less about what and more about why.
Totally. It's like getting a backstage pass to someone's internal world.
Yes.
And in Sidis's case,
Yep.
we're seeing how his deep-seated need for autonomy and
Yeah.
intellectual freedom drove so many of his choices.
Absolutely. He seems to have been acutely aware of how social interactions, expectations,
Right.
the pressures of the outside world could deplete his energy
Okay.
and disrupt his inner equilibrium. So he actively constructed a life designed to minimize those intrusions.
Which takes a lot of courage, wouldn't you say?
It does.
To go against the grain like that?
Yeah.
To resist the pressure to conform to what society deems successful or acceptable?
Right.
I mean, most people wouldn't dare choose solitude over the allure of recognition or achievement.
It's true.
Right.
His story challenges our conventional notions of ambition and fulfillment.
Yeah.
It prompts us to ask ourselves,
Yeah.
are we truly living in alignment with our own values and needs?
Right.
Or are we chasing external validation that might ultimately leave us feeling empty?
That's a tough one. I know I've fallen into that trap before, seeking approval instead of staying true to myself.
It's easy to do.
And it makes me wonder how much of Sidis's withdrawal was a conscious rejection of those societal expectations,
Yeah.
particularly those placed upon child prodigies.
That's a fascinating angle.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
You're labeled a genius from a young age,
Right.
paraded around expected to achieve great things.
Yeah.
Perhaps for Sidis, the only way to reclaim ownership of his genius
Yeah.
was to detach from a world that wanted to define him, to exploit his abilities for its own purposes.
You know, that actually makes a lot of sense.
It does.
It's like he saw the potential for his intellect to be commodified,
Right.
turned into a spectacle.
Yeah.
And his retreat into solitude was a way of protecting his intellectual freedom,
Yes.
his right to explore knowledge on his own terms.
It's a powerful statement about the importance of honoring individual autonomy,
Okay.
even, or perhaps, especially when it comes to those deemed gifted.
Right.
We can't force anyone, no matter how brilliant,
Right.
to contribute to the world in a way that feels inauthentic or burdensome to them.
Right. It's like we need to shift our focus from what these individuals can do for us to what
Yeah.
they need for themselves to truly thrive and flourish.
Exactly.
It's about nurturing their unique talents and passions
Yeah.
while respecting their individual paths and choices.
Couldn't agree more. And while Sidis chose a life largely out of the public eye,
Right.
his story continues to captivate us precisely because it challenges those assumptions
Right.
about intelligence, success, and what it means to be human.
It's like he holds up a mirror to our own values and beliefs.
It does.
Forcing us to confront our own definitions of success and fulfillment.
Right.
What do we truly value? External recognition or internal harmony? Conformity or individuality?
And maybe that's the beauty of his story.
Yeah.
It doesn't offer easy answers.
Right.
It provokes more questions than it resolves.
Okay.
It reminds us that the human mind is a vast and mysterious territory,
Yeah.
and that true understanding requires not just analysis, but also humility
Yeah.
and a willingness to embrace complexity.
Okay. But let's get real for a second.
Okay.
If Sidis were alive today, what do you think he'd make of all this attention?
Oh, gosh.
The books, articles, podcasts, dissecting his life? Do you think he'd appreciate being the subject of this deep dive?
Honestly, I suspect he'd find it all rather intrusive.
Right.
Remember his aversion to multitudes.
Yeah.
He was a fiercely private individual who cherished his solitude and autonomy.
True, but maybe there's a silver lining here.
Okay.
Perhaps the fact that we're still talking about him,
Yeah.
still trying to make sense of his life and choices,
Right.
is a testament to the enduring power of his individuality.
It is.
It shows that even in a world that often prizes conformity,
Yeah.
those who dare to be different leave an indelible mark.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
It reminds us that true brilliance doesn't always fit neatly into societal expectations,
Right.
and that choosing your own path, even a solitary one,
Right.
can be its own form of genius.
Okay, I'm curious. There's been a lot of focus on Sidis's intellectual prowess
Right.
and his deliberate withdrawal from the world,
Right.
but we haven't really talked about his actual work.
Yeah.
What did he actually do with all that knowledge and time?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that even though Sidis chose not to pursue a traditional academic or scientific career, he was far from inactive. He was actually a prolific writer,
Oh, wow.
publishing on a wide range of subjects.
So what?
From cosmology and American history to transportation systems and political theory.
Wow, I had no idea. So he was contributing to the world, just not in the way people might have expected.
Exactly. And his writings often reflected his unique perspective,
Yeah.
his deep thinking and unconventional ideas.
Okay,
For example, he was a strong advocate for individual rights and liberties.
I see.
And his political writings often critique systems of power and social control.
So even though he chose a life of relative isolation,
Right.
he was still engaged with the world, grappling with important social and political issues.
Yes, and it's interesting to consider how his type 5 tendencies might have influenced his writing.
Oh.
His need for intellectual autonomy
Yeah.
and his aversion to dogma or rigid ideologies
Okay.
likely led him to approach these topics from a fresh and independent perspective.
It's like he was a lone wolf observing the world from a distance.
Yes.
Analyzing its complexities and contradictions.
Right.
And offering his own unique insights through his writing.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And while his writings might not have achieved mainstream recognition during his lifetime,
Right.
they offer a glimpse into the workings of his brilliant mind
Yeah.
and his unwavering commitment to intellectual exploration.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It does.
What other gems might be hidden within his work,
Yeah.
waiting to be rediscovered and appreciated by a new generation of thinkers and seekers.
And that brings us to another important point.
Okay.
The tendency to label Sidis a failure simply because he didn't achieve conventional success
Right.
or make groundbreaking contributions to science or academia. It's a judgment that fails to acknowledge the richness and complexity of his life and work.
Right. Success is subjective.
It is.
And who are we to impose our own definitions on someone who so clearly marched to the beat of his own drum?
Exactly. And while it's true that Sidis didn't publish groundbreaking scientific theories
Right.
or become a renowned scholar,
Yeah.
his life was far from meaningless.
Right.
He was a prolific writer, a passionate activist for causes he believed in,
Okay.
and by all accounts, a deeply thoughtful individual who engaged with the world in a way that felt authentic to him.
And who's to say what impact his ideas might have had on those who did encounter his work?
Yeah?
Maybe he planted seeds of thought that blossomed in unexpected ways,
It's possible.
influencing others to question conventional wisdom or to embrace their own unconventional paths.
That's a beautiful thought.
Yeah.
And it challenges us to expand our definition of what it means to make a contribution to the world.
Right.
It's not always about tangible achievements or public recognition.
Okay.
It can also be about the quiet yet profound impact we have on those around us, about sparking curiosity, inspiring new ideas, and encouraging others to think differently.
So instead of viewing Sidis as a failed genius,
Yeah.
we should see him as a pioneer of a different kind.
There's interest.
Someone who dared to prioritize his own intellectual and emotional well-being above societal expectations.
Right.
And in doing so, paved the way for others to embrace their own unique forms of brilliance and fulfillment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful reminder that true success isn't about fitting into a predefined mold
Right.
or achieving external markers of status or achievement.
Okay.
It's about living in alignment with your core values.
Yeah.
Even if that means forging a path that's less traveled,
Right.
less understood, or less celebrated by the mainstream.
You know, as we delve deeper into Sidis's life,
Yeah.
I can't help but think about how his childhood, especially his complex relationship with his mother,
Yes.
might have played a role in shaping his worldview and his choices.
Yes. That's an important aspect of his story that we need to address.
Right.
It's no secret that Sidis had a strained relationship with his mother,
Okay.
who was also his primary educator.
Yeah.
And this dynamic sheds light on the potential challenges faced by type 5 children, particularly those with the conservation subtype,
Right.
when their innate need for autonomy and intellectual exploration clashes with the expectations or parenting styles of their caregivers.
Right, because for a type 5 child
Yeah.
who already craves independence and control over their environment,
Right.
having a parent who is overly involved or intrusive
Yeah.
can feel incredibly stifling,
It can.
can create a sense of being overwhelmed and misunderstood,
Yeah,
which can further reinforce their tendency towards withdrawal and self-reliance.
exactly. And in Sidis's case, it seems his mother, while undoubtedly well-intentioned,
Right?
may have struggled to understand and accommodate his unique needs.
Okay.
There are reports that he felt pressured by her intense focus on his intellectual development, that he longed for more space and freedom to explore his own interests at his own pace.
And that kind of disconnect between a child's innate temperament and the parenting they receive can have a lasting impact shaping their sense of self, their relationships with others, and their overall approach to life.
Absolutely. And while we can't say for certain how much Sidis's relationship with his mother contributed to his later choices,
Right.
it's an important piece of the puzzle that helps us understand the complexities of his personality
Right.
and his deep-seated need for autonomy and control over his environment.
It's a reminder that even the most brilliant minds are shaped by their early experiences,
They are.
and that understanding those experiences is crucial to appreciating the full complexity of their lives and choices.
It also highlights the importance of recognizing and respecting the unique needs of type 5 children,
Okay.
particularly when it comes to parenting and education.
Right.
These children thrive in environments that offer a balance of support and freedom,
Yeah.
where their natural curiosity is nurtured,
Okay.
while their need for independence and intellectual exploration is honored.
So as we continue to unravel the enigma of William James Sidis,
Right.
let's remember that he was more than just a collection of extraordinary talents or a case study in unfulfilled potential.
Yeah.
He was a human being with a unique set of needs, desires, and vulnerabilities just like all of us.
He was.
And perhaps it's through that lens of empathy and compassion that we can truly appreciate the richness and complexity of his life,
Absolutely.
even if we never fully grasp the mystery of his genius.
Beautifully said. And, you know, it's this sense of mystery that keeps drawing us back to Sidis's story, isn't it?
It is.
The fact that we can analyze his life through various lenses,
Yeah.
apply psychological frameworks,
Yeah.
and still never quite pin him down.
It's as if he embodies the very essence of what it means to be human,
Yes.
a blend of brilliance and contradiction,
Right.
capable of both soaring intellectual heights
Yeah.
and retreating into the depths of solitude.
And perhaps that's the most valuable lesson we can glean from his life.
Okay.
That true genius lies not in conformity,
Right.
but in embracing our own unique complexities
Yeah.
and forging a path that feels authentic to who we truly are. And on that note, perhaps it's time we turn the conversation back to you, dear listener.
Yes, we've explored the intricacies of the Type 5 conservation personality. We've delved into the fascinating and often contradictory details of Sidis's life.
Right.
But now we want to hear from you.
Yes.
What resonates with you most about Sidis's story?
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
What insights have you gained about the nature of genius individuality or the pursuit of a fulfilling life?
We encourage you to share your thoughts, reflections, and even your own personal experiences in the comments section below.
Right.
Because this deep dive isn't just about William James Sidis. It's about all of us and our shared journey of understanding what it means to be human in all its glorious complexity.
And as always, dear listener, we thank you for joining us on this exploration.
Yes, thank you.
Stay curious, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay true to yourself. As we wrap up our deep dive into the life of William James Sidis, I keep coming back to this idea of a perfect life
Oh, yeah?
that he craved.
Right.
It's such a loaded phrase, isn't it?
It really is. It begs the question.
Yeah.
What did perfect even mean to him?
Exactly.
Was it about external success recognition, a legacy?
Right.
Or was it something deeper, more internal?
Because for Sidis, it seems like perfection was less about what he achieved
Yeah,
and more how he lived.
I think so.
It was about freedom from the demands and expectations of a world that he felt couldn't understand him.
Exactly. His version of a perfect life
Right.
was deeply intertwined with solitude and intellectual autonomy.
Okay.
Remember that quote we discussed earlier?
Yes.
The only way to achieve this is through isolation and solitude. I have always hated multitudes.
Right.
It wasn't just about peace and quiet.
Right.
It was about creating a space where his mind could operate without interference, without the constant drain on his energy that he felt from social interaction.
It almost makes you wonder if he saw the world as a kind of battery drainer.
Oh, interesting.
Like all the noise and demands of society were slowly depleting his inner resources.
That's a compelling analogy.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the core fear of a type 5,
Right.
especially a conservation 5. The fear of being overwhelmed, of being incapable of meeting the demands placed upon them.
I see.
Solitude for Sidis
Yeah.
might have been a way to manage that fear, to create a world where he felt competent and self-sufficient.
So his perfect life wasn't about rejecting the world outright,
Yeah.
but rather about creating a buffer zone.
Yeah, a safe
A
space.
space where he could engage on his own terms
Right.
without feeling drained or compromised.
Precisely. And it challenges us to consider our own definitions of a perfect life.
Right.
Are we chasing external markers of success, material possessions, social status, even if those pursuits leave us feeling depleted and disconnected from our true selves?
It's like that saying, be careful what you wish for. You might just get it.
Oh, yeah.
You could achieve all the outward trappings of success and still feel completely empty inside.
It's a trap that many of us fall into, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
The constant striving, the need to prove ourselves, the fear of not measuring up.
Right.
Sidis' story, in a way, offers a counter-narrative.
Okay.
It suggests that true fulfillment might lie in rejecting those external measures of success
Yeah.
and instead focusing on creating a life that aligns with our deepest needs and values.
It's a radical concept, isn't it?
It is.
To prioritize inner harmony over external validation.
Yeah.
To choose a path that might not lead to fame or fortune,
Right.
but instead leads to a deep sense of peace and self-acceptance.
It is radical, and I think that's why Sidis' story continues to fascinate us.
Yeah.
It challenges our assumptions about what it means to live a good life, a successful life.
Right.
It suggests there's a no one-size-fits-all approach. That true fulfillment is deeply personal and often found in the most unexpected places.
And perhaps that's the most valuable lesson we can take away from this deep dive.
I agree.
It's not about judging Sidis' choices or trying to fit him into a neat little box. It's about recognizing the inherent complexity of the human experience, the diverse ways in which we each seek meaning and fulfillment.
It's about honoring individual autonomy, even when those choices seem unconventional or even contradictory to our own values.
Exactly. And it's about having the courage to define success on our own terms,
Yes.
to create lives that feel authentic and meaningful, even if they don't fit the mold of what society expects or deems valuable.
I love that.
So as we bid farewell to William James Sidis,
Yeah.
let's carry with us the inspiration to embrace our own unique paths, to honor our inner needs, and to never stop seeking knowledge and understanding, whether that journey takes us into the depths of solitude or out into the bustling world beyond.
Beautifully said. And dear listener, as always, thank you for joining us on this exploration.
Yes, thank you for listening.
We encourage you to continue pondering the complexities of Sidis's life
Right.
and to reflect on what truly matters to you in your own pursuit of a fulfilling life.
Stay curious, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay true to yourself.